key date I mentioned, 19th of February 2024. On that date, the class license for amateur radio commences. There is a transition period, which I'll go through, and some of the transition elements that we need to go through. And also on that date, the AMC, the Australian Maritime College, hands back call sign and assessment services to the ACMA. So they have signalled that they do not want to continue the contract, and they're handing it back to the ACMA. And so the ACMA are furiously trying to get together all of the things involved with call sign administration, and also obviously assessment administration as well. So and there's been a range of webinars that assessors have been attending over the last 3 or 4 months. The last one was just before Christmas, a week before Christmas. So yeah, they're valiantly trying to get things in place. So some of the key instruments which they released about 3 weeks ago. There is the class license, which we're going to be having a look at tonight. There is also the explanatory notes that go along with the class license. Now, the explanatory notes are probably an even more fascinating read than the actual legislation, the actual subordinate legislation, because the explanatory notes are what the lawyers go to when they have to fight something in court. They go straight to the explanatory statements, because the explanatory statements are how the legislation was put together, why the legislation was put together, and why particular clauses are the way they are in the legislation. So really, really fascinating read, and I'll point out a few of the more interesting bits. And there's a couple of other instruments which are required to move from an apparatus license into a class license, and they're the other two there. So I'll put them up on the those links up on the video description, so if people are interested in having a look. Now, I just wanted to do a quick refresher. That's probably a refresher more than anything. A quick refresher as to, under the Radio Communications Act of 1992, there are 3 different license types which are defined as part of that legislation. The very first one is spectrum licensing. Now, spectrum licensing is a specific part of a spectrum is licensed, and a good example of this is mobile phones. The mobile phone is a spectrum licensed, and the governments around the world make an awful lot of money off of spectrum licensing arrangements in the various countries. They sell off huge amounts of the mobile phone type spectrum for billions of dollars. The second type is apparatus licensing. Now, apparatus licensing is a license to operate a radio communications device to which that license relates to, and this is where we are currently. We are what they call a non-assigned apparatus license. The whole focus is on the actual apparatus and the licensing of that apparatus, and the whole thing around the amateur provisions and amateur qualifications and call signs and all sorts of stuff is sort of hung off the side of that. It's sort of bolted onto the apparatus license, which is one of the reasons why the ACMA wanted to move to the class license. And then the third type of license under the Radio Communications Act is the class license. Now, the class license is a license under which any person may operate radio communications devices that come within or come with a particular term or condition or parameters of that particular license. And what we're going to be doing is, in this presentation, they specify 5 conditions as part of the class license, and the 5 conditions that they have specified under this class license is a qualification, a call sign used to enable identification, there are some permitted frequency bands which we are using, which is obviously the amateur frequencies. There are some prescribed transmitter output limits for amateur stations, and then there is a scary section on electromagnetic energy requirements, so EME requirements for the operation of amateur stations. Now there are some other minor conditions in there which I've got a slide on in shortly, but these are the main ones. These are the main conditions that are required under the class license. So what I've structured this presentation. There are now 5 slides, one for each of these areas, to outline in more detail what they mean by each of these. The very first one is a qualification. So we need a qualification. So and there's a whole lot of legal definitions in here. A qualified person is someone who has a recognised qualification, already has a recognition certificate, is visiting Australia but not an Australian resident, has not been in Australia for more than 365 days, holds a recognised overseas qualification, and signed a call sign on behalf of the country, that particular country's admin. So that's what they call a qualified person. A recognised qualification is either an advanced, a standard, or a foundation, or a overseas equivalent, and they're published on the ACMA website. And there's a little note in there: the ACMA may cancel at any stage, and they need to publish that when they do. So that's one of the operational or the administration side of that particular condition under the class license. The second one is Schedule 4, deals with call signs in the class license. So the ACMA may assign a call sign to a person. This is part of the class license. It's also part of the Radio Communications Act. The person applies to the ACMA, the call sign's assigned, application can be made in a form approved by the ACMA. Applications are made in a method approved by the ACMA, so it could be any sort of method, could be hard copy, could be online, could be whatever. And the person pays a charge, if any, determined by the ACMA, which they have. They've published those charges for the call sign allocation, which are the same, very similar to the AMC charges. Now, under the class license, though, it now says the ACMA must assign a call sign to a person, a qualified person. Have regards to policies that they have in place. They need to notify that person in writing, and also it is a reviewable decision that they make. So there is a dispute resolution section in the class license, and that's all those procedures for dispute resolution are under Schedule 6. So now there's a transition arrangements, which I'll go into in a few slides time, which introduce the concept of there being an assignment period for call signs, and I'll cover what that means later. The third condition for the class license is permitted frequency bands. So each license type has bands and power and bandwidth limitations associated with it. The bands that are well known and haven't changed, will not change under the class license for the foundation, standard and advanced level licenses. The bandwidths for foundation, for their 80, 40 and 15, if it's greater than 8 kilohertz, it needs to be less than 1 watt per 100 kilohertz. So this is power density measurements. For the 40 meters DX, it needs to be less than 8 kilohertz. For 10 meters, it needs to be greater. If greater than 16 kilohertz, it needs to meet that power density limit again. And if it's above 2 meters, there is absolutely no limitation. Now, can I just say, this is exactly the same as what it is now, so there's no difference here. All they've done is simplified it. You don't have to go to multiple places to find this. It's all in the class license. The standard, very similar, except of course there are some other variations. There is 10 meters, there is also 50 to 52 and 52 and above. 50 to 52, there is a less than 100 kilohertz bandwidth limit, and 52 megs and above, there is no limitation. And then, of course, with the advanced, they also get 2200 meters, which is less than 2.1 kilohertz. On 630 meters, it is less than 3 kilohertz, and very similar conditions for everything else. So, so that's the bands and the bandwidth conditions. This is condition number 3 under the class license. Condition number 4 is the power. So condition number 4 is for each license type there is power specified. PX and PY is how they, now these are the ITU designations. So there is, this was referred to in the previous one, it's now been simplified. Foundation is 10 watts peak envelope power for everything. For the standard for J3E and R3E, it is, so that's sideband and phase, 100 watts peak envelope power. Everything else is 30 watts mean power, so average power, PY. For advanced, there are a few different modulation methods in there. Can have 400 watts peak envelope power. Everything else is 120 watts mean power. And for 2200 meters, there's 1 watt peak envelope power EIRP. And for 630 meters, it's 5 watts peak envelope power EIRP. So, and I wish you luck getting those sort of levels out your antenna on those bands. Condition number 5. So this is the last condition that's specified in the class license. Schedule 1 specifies the electromagnetic emissions requirements. Now, when you look at these in the class license, my first reaction to this was, oh my God, I need to be not only a mathematician, I need to be a lawyer, and I need to be a few other things to understand this. No, it's not. It is the same as what we had, same regime, EME regime, as what we had before. What they have done is included all of the relevant documents, the ARPANSA measurement documents, the ARPANSA level documents, etc., etc. They have actually included all of those into the class license. You had to go to a separate document to see all of these in the current arrangements. Sorry, the arrangements we're currently in. You had to go to a separate document, so it's all been included in the class license. So simplified, it's all in one place. So there are, I just noted here, we must not operate if the radio frequency field produced exceeds the reference level for the general public exposure where antennas are accessible by the general public. So that's the umbrella statement, if you like. Slightly different measurement regimes between 10 megs and 30 megs, and 30 megs to 2 gigs, and then 2 gigs and above. So there is slightly different ways that you have to measure using the various standards. There are 2 risk levels, which is what we have now. There is 100 watts and below. It is antennas are not accessible by the general public. They are greater than 10 meters above the ground, and the average total EIRP is less than 3200 watts. Now that sounds absolutely enormous. It's actually, where you've got a directional antenna like a Yagi or a dish. A dish is a classic one here. Dish has high gain, so you need, if you're putting in reasonable amounts of power into a dish, you have to make sure that it is below 3200 watts EIRP. So you need to do the calculations. You know the gain of the antenna, you know your input power, you know what is going to be coming out of the front of the antenna. So that's the low risk arrangements. High risk is everybody who is not covered by the low risk conditions. You need to keep records. You need to keep records of your antennas, their gain, etc., etc. And you can use an agent if you want to go into that high risk category where you do actually have to The high risk category means that you have to do all the calculations, you need to have them on site, you need to update them if you change things, etc., etc. In that high risk category, you can use an agent, an RF agent, to actually do those calculations for you. So they're the 5 conditions that are specified as part of the class license. We can operate our class license if we comply with those 5 conditions. So that's as simple as it gets. Now, there are some other license conditions which are specified in different parts of the class license. Part 3 outlines call sign usage. So this is some of the stuff which was a bit of a mix of operational, like standard operating procedure, a bit of custom and practice, a bit of all sorts of things. It's now all included in the class license in the document. There is call sign usage every 10 minutes, the supervision of people who don't have a license, specified times and dates that you can use the AX call sign, when you can use contest call signs, which is only, funnily enough, during contests, special event call signs, and the use of VK0 and VK9 call signs. And that assignment period is one of those things that comes into play, but I'll go into that in a sec. Purpose and transmissions. This is the section. No financial gain. Cannot run a business through amateur radio. That's a no-no. That's still a no-no. No change to that. There are some transmit conditions in there. Obviously, no encoding. So if you're encoding with the desire to hide your transmission, that is actually still illegal. It still is illegal. No advertising. Now, the interesting thing here is they've taken out entertainment. So I thought that was an interesting little nuance there. No advertising, but they've actually taken out the word entertainment. And it covers also automatic modes and computer controlled modes. So they're allowed under the license by all license conditions. Oh dear, oh dear. Have my cup of tea. Now, emergency services, operations and training. There's some conditions that are specified for those areas for emergency services, operations and training. There's a little bit about call sign usage, and also call sign identification is only every 30 minutes if it's under those emergency service, operations and training areas. So that's an interesting nuance. Interference and spurious emissions. There is still a statement in there about causing no harmful interference. That is what we're there for. And also there is a formula specified to calculate spurious emissions and what level they need to be below. So that's all specified. And there's some additional restrictions, namely no operation in 3.4 to 3.6 gigs. There's obviously no operation in spectrum licensed areas, so that covers the mobile phone and a few other areas. And there is no operations in the radio quiet zone in Western Australia. So where the square kilometre array is, there is a radio quiet zone which is legislation, and so you need to be aware of that. There is also radio quiet zones around Mount Pleasant actually as well. There is a radio quiet zone, so interesting, and also Coyne Ridge. So we've got a little southern Tasmanian nuance here that we need to be aware of, which I might go into in a future program. So they're the conditions that are specified in the new class license. It hasn't changed. The key message here, people, is it's not suddenly going to change everything. It's not going to change very much at all. In fact, it's made it a whole lot easier because everything's in the same place, which is absolutely fantastic. Now, there are some transitional arrangements which are in place. Consequential what I'd call in Tasmania consequential amendments, but they don't have consequential amendments in the feds. But they include consequential amendments as part of the transition arrangements. You do not need to apply to the ACMA or pay any fees for your licence come the 19th of February 2024. So this is the key thing. It is now a free licence as of the 19th of February. You can continue to use your existing call sign. So that is also, unless you surrender it, and that's the next stop point, you can surrender your existing licence. So this is your apparatus licence, and if you had paid your licence fee after the 9th of December, then you potentially have or are eligible for a refund. Now there are some conditions around the refund, but if you paid your licence fee after the 9th of December, then you are eligible for a refund. You need to surrender your apparatus licence and you can specify that you want to surrender your apparatus licence on the 19th of February so that you have a continuation of licence. And if an amateur licensee does not wish to surrender their licence, well, their licence continues through until the end of their apparatus licence, whatever that date is. So there is a bit of an overlap here of both licences. January 2024, the ACMA is going to write out to everybody, all amateurs in Australia, all existing non-assigned apparatus amateur licences, to outline the key transmission arrangements, confirm your qualification level and your call signs that you currently hold. So that's coming out in the not too distant future. For advanced licensees travelling overseas, the confirmation letter that you will then receive will also be the document you can show the authorities overseas to prove that you have CEPT and HARIC equivalent licenses, so that you can actually operate your amateur radio licence in those CEPT and HARIC and other countries where we have arrangements with those countries. So, call signs from the 19th of February 2024 will have an assignment period. Now, this is what I mentioned earlier. What that means is they will then have an end date put on them. Now, most of them will be in perpetuity, so they'll have an end date which is way, way off in the future, and until the assignee no longer requires it and they surrender their call sign, the ACMA will check with call sign assignees every 5 years to see whether they are, number one, are still alive, number two, you still require your call sign, etc. VK0 and VK9 contest and special events call signs now will have an assignment period of 12 months. So contest call signs and VK0, VK9 will only be assigned for a 12-month period, and then they'll expire, and you will need to renew them. So contest call signs. So the 4-letter contest call sign, you will need to renew every year. Contest call sign assignment period will be revised to align with the end of the first anniversary of their expiry date. So there is no need to do anything until it comes up to an expiry date, and then it will be 12 months assignment on a rolling basis from there. So now, RADCOM. Now, the radio communications, the Register of Radio Communications and Radio Licensing, RADCOM, will no longer, as of the February 2024, will no longer contain amateurs in the RADCOM database. There is a separate call sign register that the ACMA, I understand, is working on. That call sign register will have in it the ability to search a call sign whether it will come up with whether that call sign is assigned, available, or reserved. And if that call sign is assigned, it will give you the qualification level of that call sign. It will not give you the name of the amateur. And this is to meet privacy requirements, ongoing privacy and the Personal Information Protection Act, etc., requirements. So you can look up a call sign and know whether it is a foundation standard and advanced, and whether it's assigned or not. So there you go. That's what will replace what is in RADCOM right at the moment. Now some other stuff. This is the final slide. I find this fascinating because whenever legislation is put up to Parliament or put through the below the line stuff, which is what this has gone through, where it sits on the floor of Parliament for X amount of time and any objections, etc., when any legislation goes through, it has to meet a whole lot of regulatory requirements and also human rights implications, if there are any, for this particular legislation. Now, in the submission that the explanatory notes that the ACMA put together, they outlined that there were no regulatory or human rights implications, and they actually named up the human rights implications as they are compatible with human rights because they promote the right to freedom of expression by maintaining the ability of amateur licensees to exercise that right through the operation of amateur stations. So I thought that was an interesting nuance. They are actually using our amateur license to support the fact that we have freedom of expression, because we can obviously contact and discuss with other countries and people all of the things that amateur stations, amateur operators do when they contact people over the air. So I just thought that was an interesting little nuance there. So anyway, that's the presentation that I put together. I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea, little bit of a better idea about our class license. If there are any questions, please drop them into the chat or email me or contact me. Question re antenna accessibility. What about antennas on vehicles and handheld devices? I'm glad you asked. These are actually covered as part of the description in the class license. Mobiles are obviously a whole lot less power. It's a quarter of the 100 watts. So that's taken into account. And antennas, the interesting thing about antennas is they are accessible by the general public. Are they accessible if they are actually transmitting? You have control, the amateur has control of the transmitter, and so it is upon the amateur to obviously not transmit when the general public is close to their antenna. So there you go. So, but there is a section in the class license which does cover mobile operation. So it is covered, Sean, and worth a look in the explanatory notes. So we do cover base and home operation and also mobile operation. Will the RADCOM replacement list detail amateur repeaters? Okay, now RADCOM will. Exactly, and an excellent question, Sean. They certainly will, and thanks, Muzz. They certainly will, because beacons and repeaters remain as assigned apparatus licenses. So they are, and if you think about it, it is all about the equipment at the site. So the repeater that is at the site, the power that's used in the repeater, the mode that the repeater uses, etc. So that is actually the right application for an apparatus license. So beacons and repeaters remain apparatus licenses. The nuance is that they need to be associated with what they class as a natural person, So this is an area that's being explored at the moment. And so instead of it being able to be assigned to a club, it will need to be assigned to a particular person. So that's something we need to work through. So yeah. So beacons and repeaters will continue in Radcom, and everybody else's class licenses will be in the new register.